In this episode, we sit down with Jeff Kaplan of Venture Asheville and Just Kibitz. We talk about entrepreneurship and business strategy. Let's start with a soundbite from Jeff.
Yeah, actually, can I take a big step back and do a really short version of why Venture Asheville is and why we exist from economic development strategy?
Please.
So economic development is classically site selection. How do we recruit that big factory to our community, right? So that's when automotive ones are really simple to talk about. So you got Volkswagen out in Chattanooga, or you've got BMW down in Greenville. And when you land a major factory like that, that creates a certain amount of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs, just because you got to staff the factory. But they have a trickle effect where they create services that serve the factory, or vendors like OEMs to serve this. So it just keeps multiplying when you have a major anchor like that. So that's what every community does. So that's like site selection. And then the next step of that is business retention or expansion. So they want to expand the plant, add a new product line. Someone has to coordinate that. And those usually have some type of incentive from the local government. So that's a real import strategy. And also, that also means you need workforce development pipelines. But what about growing our own, right? So how do you create the next generation of headquartered businesses here? It's not enough to just say, we're going to keep bringing businesses into our community, but what's happening here that we can, support or pour resources into to create the next big thing? And that's why Venture Asheville exists. It's a holistic approach to economic development where we focus on new venture creation. We want to create the next generation of Asheville headquartered businesses.
Welcome to Making It in Asheville, a podcast where you get to hear the stories behind some of your favorite artists and businesses here in town. Each week, we interview a different local Ashevillean, and we work to uncover how they're making it in Asheville, their story, and actionable insights from each conversation.
And we are your hosts. I'm Tony, and that was Sarah, and we are a husband and wife team that moved to Asheville in May of 2019. For the last year, we've made it our sole purpose is to try and figure out how people are making it in Asheville. The way that we've done it is by sitting down with them and having long, meaningful conversations about their work and their life, and we've recorded it all in this podcast. We are thankful to be able to do this, provide this for free to the community, and also learn through the process. But in season 4, we are excited to announce that we have a sponsor that has helped us make this even better, and that sponsor is Range Urgent Care.
Range is a local walk-in clinic here in town. They're founded by a husband and wife team, and what they really specialize in is simplified healthcare experience. So they offer things like virtual visits and super transparent pricing so that you know what you're going to pay before you experience the visit, and so many other things. You can also have a subscription through Range Urgent Care and pay monthly. And when you book through us, you're going to get your first month free. So visit makingitinasheville.com/range to learn more about all of their services and how to get your first month free.
I love that. And just to double underline, their membership process, I think, is fantastic. It's less cost over the course of a year, a subscription, and they have flexible membership concepts. So I have the individual, you could have a business plan, a family plan. You can learn all about those again on makingitinasheville.com/range, and you can use
makingitinasheville.com/range.
I love to leave the .com out. I just assume there's an assumed thing there, and so /range, or use Making It in Asheville as your coupon code if you go to Range directly. Awesome. So episode 54 with Jeff Kaplan was honestly, I think it was a slightly different take on Jeff Kaplan than we're used to. So if you don't know Jeff Kaplan yet, we are pleased to introduce him to you. He is perhaps one of the most connected people in Asheville that we're aware of in terms of the business community here. He is the program coordinator, I'll say, for
He's
Venture.
the director of Venture Asheville.
Perfect.
When Venture Asheville is, for those of you who don't know, we'll talk more about it in the episode, but they are part of the Asheville Chamber of Commerce. And specifically, they deal with new startup businesses that are high growth. They have all sorts of programs from funding to education, mentorship, and so much more.
And we're pretty excited. I mean, the conversation is wide. We talk about a number of things like Venture Asheville and the couple or multiple ways that they are providing value to this community. We also talk about how Jeff Kaplan has been an entrepreneur beyond just being a supporter of entrepreneurs. He's sold a business. He's growing a business now. But the thing that I'm so excited about, because our platform exists, is the Impact Micro Loan Program. So if you haven't heard of this yet, it's this, I believe, the second year that Venture Asheville is running this program. It is a historically crowdsourced $25,000 investment fund that they place 5 investments of $5,000 into a the business doesn't exist yet. So if you have a business idea and you need money to get it started, we would highly recommend that you listen to this podcast episode and listen to the way to get involved in the Impact Fund.
Yeah, so Jeff tells us a lot more about all of Venture Asheville's initiative, including funding, as well as some of the studies that he's done on entrepreneurship. So he's been studying entrepreneurship since college. He graduated with essentially a degree in entrepreneurship, and he shares with us some of these characteristics that he's identified that he thinks are what makes entrepreneurs successful. So I thought that part was particularly interesting, but without further ado, let's get into it.
Episode 54 with Jeff Kaplan. Please enjoy. Hello and welcome. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Kaplan. I'm the director of Venture Asheville, part of the Economic Development Coalition and Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce. Also the #1 chamber in the world, or I guess the U.S. We just won that award last July.
Whoa.
Wait, really?
You guys didn't know that? Yeah. The chamber is the #1 chamber. We won #1 chamber in the Carolinas 2 years ago. And then last year we won #1 chamber in the United States. Maybe North America. It might include Canada.
That seems amazing to me. I did not know that.
How is that judged? Like, how do they choose the #1 chamber?
It's super competitive. It's a long application. It's scored by other chambers, and then it's 3 days of interviews at the annual conference for CACCE, I believe, or ACCE is the accrediting body there.
Wow.
And yeah, we won last year. So I like to throw that out there. Like, not only is it a chamber, it is the best chamber.
Cool.
Not an opinion, it's a fact. That is a peer-reviewed best chamber in America. It's also by market size. So we're in like the middle tier market, MSA market size.
I'm sorry. I think that we're going to lead with that, because that is, for as much as publicity as I see you are the quintessential hype man. So people will hopefully have given you some context in the intro to this podcast. But for as much as I know about businesses in Asheville, thanks to the good work that you and the quarter other person on your team do at the chamber, I feel like I should know that we have the greatest chamber in potentially all of the Americas, but definitely North America, if not the U.S. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's a great fact. We celebrated it pretty heavily with our board. I mentioned it. I went to City Council for Asheville Entrepreneurship Week, and I got to make that comment. The same joke. That's not an opinion; it's a fact.
Yeah.
Deborah Campbell nodded along. I was like, "Yeah, she knows it. People know." If you walk into the chamber, there's a pretty large award right up front.
That's
go in,
so
look
cool.
to the right. The next time you walk in there, you'll see it.
Wow, cool. So we look forward to that. So we typically will say, like, what's happening now? So we've won the greatest chamber of commerce in the United States. Not an opinion, it's a fact. When did that come out? And we're clearly in a funny time This is May 1st of 2020. But like, what's happening in the chamber today now that we are the best in the country? What's happening?
Yeah, so it's been a pretty fascinating last, almost 60 days of watching the coronavirus creeping across the country. Before I remember, I got back from the startup road trip March 12th, and then March 13th we were told to go home and don't come back to the office. So what's been happening is taking care of members in one way, and we do the same thing at Venture Asheville. So we're a program of the chamber. We focus on startups, new ventures, and specifically high growth type companies. Whereas a chamber could be any kind of business member, small business, big business. You can just be a member of the chamber. But we're doing the same kind of thing where the first probably couple weeks, it was checking in and triage. Most of our questions and most of the stuff we're working through was things like cash flow, payroll, furloughs versus layoffs, just walking our, what we call them founders or business owners, CEOs, through all the myriad of challenges that were happening so quickly. And then the chamber really stepped up in a great way for our community as a leader in communication. They created a dedicated web page, tons of traffic was being dedicated there, sent there, and it's this compendium of knowledge of everything you need to know about what's happening in the crisis, whether it's funding, policy, HR, government, things to do with your members. We were changing our fee structures and we're postponing dues, but also connecting people to PPP loans or EIDLs. We were holding town halls and webinars with the SBA or other lenders. They just did a series of industry-specific town halls with the county, hosted for the county on reopening. So They're not saying when it's going to happen or what it's going to be, but it was a chance to listen to folks, for example, in retail or manufacturing or child and adult care, daycare facilities, they're one chance for input. And so the chamber, a common theme for chambers is to be a conduit or to be a convener. Our chamber, I think, has really stepped up into the mission, and it's done a great job being really fast to respond in appropriate ways when it comes to getting the right people at the table.
Yeah.
So for right now, a lot of it's been government, public health officials, and businesses.
Wow. And so let's back up a little bit, because I think we jumped right into everything with the chamber and then everything that's going on right now with the coronavirus. But how did you get here? How did you get to Asheville, and how did you become part of Venture Asheville?
Yeah, it's all my wife's doing. My wife, Danielle, who, like Sarah, grew up in Roswell, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. And so my wife in
best
the
little
summers
town.
as a kid.
Sorry, I think Roswell is one of the best little towns in the country. Speaking of chambers, they should be up for best little town. Maybe not the best chamber, but best little town. Sorry.
Best little town. Yeah, I haven't been to Roswell in years. I went and visited once or twice. It's and apparently it's got a whole new downtown. Very exciting for Roswell.
Oh yeah.
Not where the aliens came. Sorry, not where the aliens came. This is Georgia.
Different Roswell. I think that was the first thing when I met my wife. Was at a frat party in Gainesville, University of Florida. And I was like, "Where are you from?" She said, "Roswell." And I started laughing, like, "New Mexico?" She's like, "No, Georgia, you idiot." Like, no, how do you not know that? Like, I don't know. I never heard of it before. I'm sorry. He should have said Atlanta. It's a suburb of Atlanta. So she grew up every summer coming here. Her brother was in the Duke TIP program at App State. So what they would do as a whole family, they would come up to this area, drop them off in Boone, and then spend a week or two hanging out all across Brevard and Asheville and Hendersonville and this whole area. And she just knew after she graduated school and was going into the workforce that she wanted to move to Asheville. I'm from South Florida. I'm from Miami. And I was happy to move anywhere. My degree is in entrepreneurship. I have a master's in it from Florida. My wife's a veterinarian. So her job mobility is the complete opposite of mine, right? She needs to find an animal hospital, get committed, buy in, and then not leave, right? Like that's like I don't mean physically or monetarily buying in, but like, you want to find an animal hospital you can be at for a long time. You want to build a great clientele. You want to be committed to a place. Whereas my degree in entrepreneurship, working in startups and websites and building apps and all this kind of stuff, I was happy to go anywhere. And I knew coming here that it's a supposedly the reputation being a really tough job market. And I knew that I would, as long as I was with people who loved what they did, I was going to be happy. I worked in jobs where people are miserable and how it's a toxic work environment. And I didn't care what I did. If I was selling vacuum cleaners or doing a call center, didn't care. If people were going to be happy and like working together, I knew I would enjoy working here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I moved here and I met John Jones with Anthrowear at Talent Jam, which was a great event where you get up there and you pitch for a minute if you need a job, or you get up and pitch for a minute if you have a job, you're willing to swap. Met John, interviewed with him, and then took a job at Anthrowear as a product owner and consultant. What I loved about working at Anthrowear is at my first interview, I toured the Hatch building with John. John's also the founder of this nonprofit called Hatch AVL. And I saw all this potential in Hatch to be, for our community, what the American Underground is in the Triangle in Durham, or what the Nashville Entrepreneurship Center is. I saw all the makings of this building, of these co-locating companies, a co-working space, a coffee shop. It was all coming together. And I really, really want to be in that scene. That's what my graduate degree is in Florida in entrepreneurship. I should probably take a second to say that I got my master's degree, and then I started working for the college. I was a head teaching assistant, graduate assistant, and then I ended up teaching one of the courses when a professor went on sabbatical. And when he came back, I led the Disabled Veterans Program and our Women's Entrepreneurship Program, our student incubators. Anything happening in this world of entrepreneurship, I was just like, let me at it. I want to be a part of it. So moving here, I knew that eventually I wanted my career to get back into that world. I get this entrepreneurship ecosystem development, and being in Hatch with John at Anthrowear seemed like a great foot in the door. And the work at Anthrowear was phenomenal. The custom software development they do, the product development methodology, the design thinking, using software is so cool. But I was so excited to be there in Hatch. And as Hatch developed and started doing more programs and events, I was leading a lot of those events as a volunteer and putting things together. Next thing you know, I've kind of like immersed in this ecosystem, built a great network, and then the job at Venture Asheville opened up. And I leapt that. I was really excited for the opportunity to apply. And I got to know Josh Dorfman, my predecessor, really well. I actually met Josh and was talking to Josh for 2 or 3 years before I ever moved here. Wow. Because I wanted to know, is there a place for someone like me to come to Asheville? Like if we move here, my wife wants to be a veterinarian, am I going to be able to find a job in tech, or can I build what are my options? So when I took over Venture Asheville, the first newsletter I wrote was about because Venture Asheville existed 5-6 years ago, it made it possible for someone like me to move here. Without this resource and support for startups, we probably would have stayed in Charlotte or gone to the Triangle or something else. Asheville did. Yeah. It's much harder for both of us to find something to do, some worthwhile work.
Yeah, I think that's like a big question that we obviously talk a lot about here at Making in Asheville is like, if you move to Asheville, what are you going to do? Because everyone says, bring your own job, or find a job before you come, because it can be quite challenging. So that's really interesting. Do you remember the first time, because you talked a lot about how you were so interested in entrepreneurship, but do you remember the first time that you sort of fell in love with that, or you realized like, oh, okay, this is my thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first job out of college was as a middle school teacher. I really, really loved teaching. And something I forget to tell people is that I started off working with 11 and 12-year-olds, which explains my personality, my spunk, if you will, and my that version of being on versus being off, I guess. And I think a lot of that comes from teaching experience. So that's why I got really involved in becoming a teaching assistant and a graduate assistant, all that when I was at Florida. And when the Disabled Veterans Program started, I didn't really know what I was getting into. But our academic director was my mentor, working on a study, independent study, and became published later. So whatever he was working on, I just kind of got lumped into. So I started teaching with the Disabled Veterans Program, and my job was to teach the 6-week pre-course for establishing the entrepreneurial mindset in these mostly Iraq and Afghan veterans, or Afghan war veterans. We had a few from Vietnam, from Desert Storm, but it was a preference to these folks who'd come back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And the one who really affected me, that really kind of got me to want to be so committed to this entrepreneurship development or entrepreneurial development is this guy Benito. Benito was I think he's a Marine in the canine unit. So if you could imagine what these guys do. But anyway, he's training dogs, and like Malinois and German Shepherds. And what he would do is he would actually go into combat and walk in the streets and patrols. He would even fast line out of a helicopter. Wow. With the dogs in a harness. You've seen like the movies where the guys in the helicopter and they shoot down the rope. Imagine doing that with a dog. No, I can't. Right, like in your harness attached to you. So he's doing this, and it's unbelievable. And he got injured when an IED blew up. I'm pretty sure it was Iraq. And the facade of a building fell onto the street, and it covered him and the dog and a couple of the guys too. So what's crazy about the story is he's okay, or he was injured. He went to rehab. He and the dog went to rehab, and he and the dog were both redeployed back to Iraq and went back into combat. And so, I mean, his story is amazing, right? This guy, he's an absolute like hero and true warrior. And then he comes back to America, and that's all he's ever done is do dog training. He's done dog training. And so he opens up, I think it's Patriot Dog Training in Arizona. And seeing him go through our program with just knowing how to be a dog trainer, to learn how to be an entrepreneur and how to build a business and how to leverage resources and be creative and solve problems in a new way, to then go back to Arizona and start this business was great. Like to see him on that journey, it's very fulfilling. It's like teaching. It's very rewarding to see your students progress and have mastery. And I followed his journey for a long time, and I saw, wow, he's actually hiring people now. And I see he's got this like sweet new truck, and he's got a second location. And you're looking at all these employees and all his social media. And it's like the power of entrepreneurship is, to me, it's about upward mobility. It's about this guy who had a vision, who had a skill set, and with the skills to build a business, to be entrepreneurial, he can lift himself up out of any situation he's in. And when he does well, it's suddenly not lifting up just him and his family, but he's employing people and lifting up an entire community of people through entrepreneurial skills. And if you want, like, talking about getting bit by the bug, like that's why I love this work and why it's so much fun. I tell people I have the best job in Asheville because we get to do this every single day with all kinds of people. And I believe that this is, we talk about right now, critically, we're worried about our concentration in our economy in an industry that is at risk or potentially not sustainable. And the way out of this is going to be through more programs like the Disabled Veterans Program or Elevate or even Scale Ups, things like Mountain BizWorks, where we're going to teach people the skills to be completely self-resilient, self-supported, and create value, and create money, and create jobs. And that's how you uplift an entire community. So yeah, as much as I love like being in the work and building apps and building software and going to market, the taking a step back at the macro level to build our ecosystem, I find even more rewarding.
And what we've seen from you is that like your ability to connect dots in the community, connect us to resources, connect us to people, has been exceptional. It seems like that role as like a step back and assess where resources are, where people are, and who needs to know who and how they can connect is a really good role for you. And it seems so interesting that you've, at least if I'm going to try and make the Spark Notes version of your story, it's like you've been a career entrepreneur facilitator, which is a relatively, I think, new concept. I can't imagine someone spending so much time in that like community building and resource allocation space. Does that seem special?
Yeah, I think it's special, I guess, is one word for it. I don't know if I would say I'm special or it's a special skill set. I think it's more unique. It's like we say, 80% of the jobs in 15 years aren't created yet. We know those kind of statistics. 10 years ago, if you said you wanted to be a content coordinator or a social media manager, people said that job doesn't exist. So I would put this like ecosystem development professional, which we're seeing them in lots of different ways now. It's probably a relatively newer job. I don't think I'm answering that question well at all.
No, I think that's fine. And I think We'll transition from Florida and the startup ecosystem there. How about in the last little while? Like, what kind of big wins or milestones have you experienced in the role through Venture Asheville in Asheville? And you take that however you want.
So really, we focus so much on metrics at Venture Asheville, and it's probably something I'd like to see more ecosystem groups like ours do, because the proof's in the pudding. So we focus on about 9 different metrics, and the ones we report most are 3: jobs, revenue, and investment. It's a really easy way to see how does your ecosystem compare to other ecosystems. So I was at Dig South, which is this conference in Charleston, and everyone's like, oh, you're from Asheville. What do they do there? I thought it's just breweries. What startups are there? And it's like, well, actually, let me tell you about the Venture 15. The Venture 15 is this grand event where we rate and rank the 15 fastest growing startups in our area, and by compounding annual growth rates and measure their jobs and impact and blah, blah, blah. And it just goes over people's heads. It's like totally, it's not like we can say, yeah, we have X amount of publicly traded companies, or we had 10 big exits last year. There's still a pretty small ecosystem, right? When you consider we're an MSA of like 250,000 or a city of under 100,000, to know that there's about 500 people here employed by startups, and that those startups last year, like the Venture 15, for example, that represented $45 million in local revenue. You know, it's not a drop in the bucket. That's a significant part of our economy. That in Elevate specifically, we've created 171 jobs.
Wow.
Now you put that apples to apples with like a job announcement, which my colleagues at the EDC do frequently. You know, so NIPRO just announced, I think, 80 jobs and an expansion, which is a manufacturer in South Asheville. That's a great announcement. And that's also why Venture Asheville is part of this economic development strategy. You have site selection and business retention and expansion, and those have those big job announcements, but ours are smaller numbers but over time. So the same amount of effort that goes into an 80-person announcement, you know, we can put into 10 companies that hire 8 people, right? It's about the numbers and the jobs. Other impact, we get very granular. So we do a program called the Asheville Startup Road Trip. We pack a van full of startup founders, and we travel to different cities, and we do pitch events. And last year that brought back $1.4 million. Wow. So when you look at that as a whole ecosystem, like what is 1.4 million of an MSA or our tourism industry brought $2 billion in last year, whatever that was. It may not seem like a lot, but that $1.4 million created something like 10 jobs, right? And that money goes back in the community, because now it's going to web developers and marketing companies and HR professionals and lawyers and accountants, and all the professional services that go into running a business benefit from that money. What's great about the Startup Road Trip is we're bringing money in from other communities into our startups. So take money out of the Triangle or from Atlanta or Chattanooga or Nashville and bring that into our community. I think is more beneficial than I've heard the phrase, passing the same $10 bill around. You can only do that so many times in Nashville, right? It's like you're never going to grow the GDP of the community, but by bringing outside money into our community, we do grow it. Again, I feel like I'm just rambling. I'm not doing a good job answering you guys' questions.
I think you're doing an exceptional job, and I think that is
kind of all over the map.
So the 3 things I heard is something of the Venture Asheville, I would say, fit within the larger Chamber of Commerce and like the city's growth plan. So there's something about retention of big businesses. There's something about expansion of those businesses and trying to pull big ones in. And then there's the work that's being done in Venture Asheville, which is across more businesses, less per business, but it's great work. And how's it showing up? It's showing up by way of money invested and revenue generated and jobs created by those smaller businesses. So it's the higher growth stuff. There's also, and we just saw it in an email, I want to say that came out last week, the Asheville Impact Micro Grant, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
how does that fit in the hierarchy or in the relationships?
Yeah, actually, can I take a big step back and do a really short version of why Venture Asheville is and why we exist from economic development strategy.
Please.
So economic development is classically site selection. How do we recruit that big factory to our community, right? So that's when automotive ones are really simple to talk about. So you got Volkswagen out in Chattanooga, we've got BMW down in Greenville. And when you land a major factory like that, that creates a certain amount of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs, just because you got to staff the factory. But they have a trickle effect where they create services that serve the factory, or vendors like OEMs to serve this. So it just keeps multiplying when you have a major anchor like that. So that's what every community does. So that's like site selection. And then the next step of that is business retention or expansion. So they want to expand the plant, add a new product line. Someone has to coordinate that. And those usually have some type of incentive from the local government. So that's a real import strategy. And also, that also means you need workforce development pipelines. But what about growing our own, right? So how do you create the next generation of headquartered businesses here? It's not enough to just say, we're going to keep bringing businesses into our community, but what's happening here that we can, support or pour resources into to create the next big thing. And that's why Venture Asheville exists. It's a holistic approach to economic development where we focus on new venture creation. We want to create the next generation of Asheville headquartered businesses.
That was
sound better.
Clean. That was really clean. So, okay, with you now, tracking. And the way that you do that practically is in some part by announcing winners.
We have three core initiatives.
Perfect. Here we go.
Three core initiatives at Venture Asheville. Mentorship, which is our Elevate program. We've had, I think, nearly 100 companies go through it. 1/3 of them will fail. 1/3 will graduate, and 1/3 stay in. So like well-known names who have graduated are French Broad Chocolates. Right? They were in our program for something like 2.5 years. It's not an incubator. It's not an accelerator. It's a long-term relationship you build with a team of mentors. And through our program, they went through fundraising, building their factory. At the grand opening was a graduation. It was a really, really nice moment. Moonlight Makers, who you guys have featured, I'm actually one of their mentors, honored to be one of their mentors. They're in our program right now. You look at that program, right? It's the whole thing of can we support these founders, connect them with the resources, make sure they have experts, because we have an incredible amount of retired executives in our community that want to give back, and they make fantastic mentors. We also do funding. So we manage the Asheville Angels. We do the Asheville Startup Road Trip. And a new one from 2 years ago is the Asheville Impact Micro Grant. And then we have programs and events throughout the year like the Venture 15 or Asheville Entrepreneurship Week. And each of these is designed to address a gap in the ecosystem. So the reason we have the Asheville Impact Micro Grant is because we saw that it's hard to start a business, and it's really hard to start from zero. People who start businesses, you always hear, oh, yep, we started with our personal savings, or I asked my friends and family to help me get off the ground. That means it takes money to make money, and you can't even start a business without $100 and something for your LLC license in the state of North Carolina. You have to start somewhere. So we wanted to address that gap in the market. It's really an equity issue. Can you truly start a business from zero? And so that's where we created the Asheville Impact Micro Grant to create $5,000 grants for basically the idea stage companies. So there's really nothing out there. If you have an idea, who's going to give you money? Nobody really should. So this is what this whole thing is about. And the way we raised the money was we did something really counterintuitive. Instead of going to a foundation or taking part of our budget or doing fundraising with the tiered campaign, we said we want to radically democratize the fundraising process and only allow folks to donate $200. That is the only level of donation. We have one class of donor. That's it. So the soundbite is it's a radically democratized community-sourced microgrant program. Always a little buzzword chained together. We did it last year, and we raised $25,000, which was $15,000 more than we thought we were going to raise. We thought it'd be great with like $2,000. Cool. We raised $25,000, and we gave it out to 5 companies at a big ceremony. It was a lot of fun. We're doing it this year, and we got to $7,000, and then everything stopped. It was March 13th, and everything went into lockdown and social distancing, and layoffs were being announced. And we couldn't, I did not have the heart to start fundraising or posting wacky, silly videos to get people to donate or doing funny newsletters. It just felt so tone deaf and off brand and insulting to try to ask people for money at this point. So we did something really antithetical to our mission, which was to be radically democratized, community sourced to go to our corporate partners. And the HCA Mission Innovation Fund came in with $10,000. First Horizon Bank Foundation came in with $5,000. And the NC Biotechnology Center came in with $3,000. And we got to $25,000. We just opened it on Friday. And applications are coming in now, which is awesome. And I feel that here's one of my like fluffy sayings I think you're gonna like, Tony. Like spring follows winter, new venture creation follows unemployment. We're about to see 20 to 25,000 people in our community probably unemployed. Yeah. I don't think that's an unreasonable estimate. And what are these people going to do? Some will be rehired, some won't. Some are going to use this chance to take a leap. So given how much pain is about to be or already is in our community, I think we'll have a pretty competitive process on our microgrant program. We'll give 5 companies $5,000 or 5 founders $5,000 to get off the ground and get going. And I think that entrepreneurs will lead our economic recovery. I think their solutions, their businesses, the opportunities they create for others will pull us out of the slump we're in. And we hope that this microgrant program can fast track 5 of those.
That's awesome. I want to pull in, so we try to announce that we're having conversations. I want to pull in a question from the general Making It in Asheville audience. And you touched on it, and the idea of like equality and equity across the community and supporting like a diverse founders group. Are there initiatives or processes in place to help non-founders be founders? Like what steps are being taken to make sure as many people know that this thing exists? And we're so glad that we get to have you on to be a platform, however small ours is, but to share the story so that maybe someone that's listening goes, I'm going to apply, and this $5,000 is game changing.
Yeah. So, again, we try to fill every gap we can see in the ecosystem, and entrepreneurs got to have a foot in the door somewhere. There's got to be a way to enter the ecosystem, and 1 Million Cups is a great venue for that. It's like get in and meet people. We do pitch parties once a month, which is open mic night for entrepreneurs. You can get up and do a 1-minute pitch about anything you want. And this is also in that top of the funnel world, the Asheville Impact Micro Grant. Last year, we had 99 applications. 50 came from female founders, 49 from male founders. Industry breakdowns, we saw about a quarter came from tech, 15 from food and beverage, 10 in the leisure, recreation, tourism, hospitality group, and then everything else is pretty small amounts. Surprisingly to me, 8% or 9% came from people of color. So our Black and brown entrepreneurs were less than 10% of our applicants. And so we saw that we have, we're not doing a good enough job reaching out to other populations. We're seeing the same faces over and over again. So that means this year we already reached out to a whole bunch of different kinds of community organizers and nonprofits and just groups and Facebook activity of saying, look, we are giving away $5,000 for anybody who wants to start a business. It's a selection process, of course, but we want to see our winners represent our community. And there's a mismatch here going on. So what can we do to do that? And that's where we're leaning on partners heavily to help us spread the message. So this community, for sure, even if you yourself are not going to, directly to your listeners, if you yourself aren't going to apply, I'm sure somebody who's thinking about starting a business. Just send them the link, ventureasheville.com/microgrant. It's a simple application process. It's just like, who are you? What's your business? How are you going to make money? Why is this scalable? In a 1-minute video. That's it.
Cool.
And what kinds of things are you looking for? So in terms of the selection process, let's say I want to apply, what kind of businesses are you looking for? Is it just how well they tell their story and sort of their plan, or is there something else underlying it?
So we don't expect you to be a master storyteller at the idea stage, right? It's going to take that process of finding product market fit and customer discovery. So It's called the Asheville Impact Micro Grant because we want to see how much impact $5,000 makes to a business. And one way to measure this is, how do you turn $5,000 into $15,000 or $50,000? That's one way to measure it. One example last year was Sarah Delaney from Three Mountains Tima Tea. She makes a carbonated draft beverage tea from Rwanda. And she used the grant to get samples sent to brokers and distributors, and she got into every fresh market in the nation, 160 stores all across the East Coast. Wow. Like, that is an awesome example of how you take a small investment to create multiplying effects. It's not about how well you tell your story. That's not important. What's important is, how much impact does $5,000 have for your business? And that's what we're going to measure applications against applications of where will the most impact be seen.
Got it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned like the progression. So I'm imagining this is phase one of a business in Asheville. This is what the Impact Micro Grant is for. Phase two is what is the next step? Is it, I'm forgetting the language that you use.
We think about like a funnel a lot of times, or even like a product life cycle S-curve chart, where, you go from ideation to growth to maturity to, either renewal or extension or decline, like any kind of product or business life cycle. So at the top of the funnel, you're going to have things like the microgrant program, pitch parties, 1 million cups. And so if you've gone through all that, then at this point you have the makings of a business, and it might be time to go to the AV Tech Incubator or Mountain BizWorks Foundations classes, join a co-working space or a peer group kind of thing. If you have a product at this point, or you're about to go to market and you're high growth, you can come to Elevate, our mentorship program. And that we say that's a long-term relationship you build with mentors to get through the inflection points of your growth curve. So as you start ticking up, it's a great time to come to Elevate and have mentors take you through. At some point, your growth curve is going to start leveling off, and maybe it's time you jump into scale up at Mountain BizWorks, or maybe you came out of scale up and now you're feeling it's time to execute and you want to come to Elevate. Or maybe it's time for a Hatch deep dive as we're getting higher up in that curve, which is a 90-day experiment with a team of mentors over there. And then if you're getting to the crest of your growth curve, maybe it's time for YPO, Young Presidents Organization, or EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, or CEO Roundtable or Mastermind Group, to get either national level type folks or just people at your same industry stage. And hopefully you don't go into decline. But if you do, that's when you want to find like a investment banker, private equity group who's either going to help you be acquired or help you find your exit. Yeah.
Right. And it seems like a lot of what you said. So not everyone listening is very familiar with everything that's available in Asheville, but in just a couple episodes ago, we had Moonlight Makers, and they raved what I guess is they're part of the Elevate program. They say that's been incredibly helpful. In the Elevate program, is there like equity exchange? Is it just you select a couple businesses based on bandwidth of the mentors available? How does someone find their way into Elevate?
Great. It's an absolutely free program. You don't even have to be a chamber member. You can just be in our community. You got to live in Buncombe or Haywood. I'm sorry. You have to have a business in Buncombe or Haywood County that is highly scalable.
So that's the X factor.
That's
so
really
like a service business might not be a fit, but if you are making widgets or software or something where you can keep making them overnight with the right infrastructure, that's a fit for Elevate.
That's exactly right, Tony.
Okay.
So that's how we define highly scalable. At the early stages, if you want to give it a number, we can say, can you 2x your revenue every year? Can you double revenue year over year? That's a very high growth curve. And it's a team of mentors, right? So you get 3 to 4 mentors on your team that are going to help you with all kinds of challenges. Some people compare it to therapy. I compare it more to consulting.
Yeah.
These folks become like your board of advisors, your board of directors, de facto board of directors. It's a free program. You just got to remain in good standing. So remain in good standing, you got to go to your monthly meeting. You got to come to the peer mentoring sessions that we run. And we want you to be a good steward of the program and of Asheville entrepreneurship. We have an experience portfolio, came directly on my graduate program. Things you have to do to stay in good standing. It's things like you have to pitch. You got to be in competitions. You got to apply for funding, whether it's free funding or angel funding. You got to be involved in your community, whether it's you want to get involved in the 1 Million Cubs or at your church. You got to be out in the community, whatever it is. You be volunteering. You got to go to conferences or trade shows. So we create this matrix of activities they have to do outside of their regular mentor sessions, and it really does push entrepreneurs into the next level.
And why? That's so, like, I think that community aspect is so interesting and so different from what maybe a traditional mentorship program would be, which maybe you just meet with your mentor once a week and then you talk and then you go and do the things. Yeah. Why is that included? Why do you think that that's so important for them to grow?
Yeah, we've found that the peer mentoring groups we run once a month outside of your regular mentor session is super popular. And we hear things like, one example I always go back to, we had a bunch of founders around a table, and someone said, for 2 years, we've been using Google Sheets to manage our inventory, and we're outgrowing it. It's not working anymore. What do you guys use? And, 10 different founders from different businesses, but at similar stages, so not really not competitors, we're talking about what inventory management system they use and why. Yeah. And by the end of this conversation, the founder knew exactly which one they wanted to use. That would have taken somebody weeks of research and weeks of sales demos and just so much time on their own when they have people who are in the same boat as you making, similar, but it's not similar product, maybe similar price range or similar stage of business, in those early transitions, which can be really painful and can, either, help you sink or swim. Having folks like you to talk to and work through critical issues is so important.
Yeah. And I mean, my thought is that all of that required work that you've identified as part of the, I guess, being in the program, it is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that if they're participating and doing all of these other things and getting repetitions at pitching, then there will be growth, barring some sort of crazy experience or event that we're maybe going through right now. But those things are, I would say, like, self-select, that the people who are participating and make it into year 2 are going to probably continue to grow because they're doing all the things that are helpful for growth. And to me, I mean, I think that's really a fascinating, like, add-on, because I've been a part of mentorship programs or things like it where, the next meeting is a month from now, and it's on a Tuesday. And so Monday before that, you try and do all sorts of stuff to make it look like you've done something since the last conversation. And that's just not enough.
If you have 2 meetings consecutively that it's the same topics and you've shown no growth over a month, we'll ask you to leave. Yeah. Our mentors are volunteers. Their currency is their time, and we want them to know they're valued for their time and appreciated. So if you're just stalling out and you're wasting our mentors' times, we'll ask you to leave the program, and we'll reassign those mentors to a team that will use them. But this experience portfolio thing is a lot of fun for me because it's actually research backed. My graduate research was in developing entrepreneurial competencies in undergraduate students at Florida. We had two comparative groups. One group was in a lecture hall for 15 weeks, got a midterm and a final. That was all the grades. And the other group was in a study abroad program in South Africa, where they spent half the day in the classroom and half the day consulting for businesses and townships in Cape Town. And then we gave this 110 question, 13 category survey on 13 different entrepreneurial competencies, things like opportunity recognition, tenacity, opportunity assessment, even the ability to build networks, risk mitigation. Anyway, so we do this comparative survey, and we find that the students in the lecture hall have no growth. The students who are actually doing the work, who are going from consulting to classroom time back and forth, have immense growth across all these competencies. So we're using that. We actually give that survey to our founders in Elevate. beginning at the end of their time in the program. And we want to see, like, if it's not just the mentorship that moves that needle to make them truly better founders. And then we assume that if you're a better founder or a more highly competent entrepreneurial entrepreneur, then your venture should succeed as you being the conduit to that venture. And we did one full cycle with a group of founders. The 3 lowest scoring founders in that group, all their ventures failed. 3 founders, and I took both. 3 in the middle who had middling scores, ventures are still cruising, and then the 3 highest scoring also actually had the best performing by jobs, revenue, and investment in that cohort. So we're doing the survey again, and we're looking for the second year, hoping to find similar growth. But the whole point of the experience portfolio is the experience portfolio, those activities we're prescribing you to do because we think it's good for you to do. They also have an all map back to the 13 entrepreneurial competencies.
Wow. So like if you had to break it down into everyday terms, right? Like what are the characteristics of a successful entrepreneur? And let's say I've never been an entrepreneur before. Maybe I'm just starting out. Can I learn how to be an entrepreneur? Or is it something you think that's more innate?
It's an age-old debate, right? It's like leadership too. Are you born a leader or can you become a leader? Are you born an entrepreneur or can you learn how to be one? And my whole background is in education. So I'm in the camp that says entrepreneurship, like your business plan, like product development, is a process. It's repeatable. It's teachable. You can develop those skills as long as you develop in the right way. So I very much believe anyone can become a great entrepreneur.
And so going back to the competencies, sorry, I didn't cut you off, but
sure.
Like if you had to describe in, 3 to 5 characteristics of successful entrepreneurs, what are you seeing?
So you gotta be tenacious, which can be just heard as you gotta have a thick skin. When you put something you love and you think is great, even before you even go to the market, before you ask people, what do you think about this? Would you buy this? Be prepared to hear no a lot. If you're trying to raise money, be prepared to hear no even more. So you gotta have a thick skin, call it tenacity. You got to be able to convey a compelling vision. That's word for word one of the competencies. But what that means is, can you inspire people? Can you convince somebody to quit their corporate job to come work for you for maybe no or less money and the potential upside, right? I tell people, I think Dan Radin at Oxbus is the best person at conveying compelling vision. He built such an incredible team at that venture. And I think it's because he came from a corporate background and knew how to, inspire people into podcasting and to build they built incredible software. Opportunity recognition, opportunity assessment, pattern recognition. Can you find the opportunity? That is super important. Which goes to, this thing you create, this widget might be cool, but is anybody else going to use it? That's the opportunity recognition piece. And then I'll say the last one is creative problem solving, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? As a founder, you're going to have to learn to do things and ask questions and learn about things you never knew you needed to know. All those unknowns out there that you're going to have to do to run a business. And you're always going to be resource strapped and low on cash and low on time and stressed out and have competing interests constantly, whether it's your family or other jobs or friends, or it doesn't matter. So if you can't solve problems creatively, I don't think you'll make it as a founder.
So I will attempt to use this as a segue, right? So you mentioned how the requirements for being a part of Elevate ask people to do things, practical application of these concepts, forward your capacity to do the thing. So with that, what kind of entrepreneurial experiences do you have outside of coaching and facilitating entrepreneurship? We know of at least one of them, but I've just recently heard now of the one that happened before it. And what would you like to share of that story?
So I keep an idea journal, which I hope a lot of founders and entrepreneurs, hope you guys do too. And I've been doing it since I was in grad school. I graduated in 2013, and just kind of perpetually add to it. In grad school, we had to write a couple business plans. There's pitch competitions. My grad school project was did two. The first one was called New Media Man, and that was a small business service for new media skills. And then by the time I graduated, I was working on chef sleeves, which were athletic shooting sleeve inspired apparel for people working in kitchens.
Interesting.
That's a really fun pitch. And then after that, got into Dog Friendly, an app that found your location and showed you every dog friendly activity near you. I was not the kind of kid that you hear these classic stories of people who are entrepreneurs. I'd say when I was 8 years old, I created a lemonade stand.
Yeah, I was ripping flowers out of gardens and handing them to the homeowner.
That was really not me. I didn't get my start until every job I've had, like that, starting as a middle school teacher, I was a multimedia teacher. I was like computer lab with 80 kids, and there was no curriculum. I was in a department of 3 people from the media center group, and they just gave me my own room. And so I've always had to kind of figure it out and have a lot of autonomy. And so from there, I went to actually grad school in Indiana to build a new master's level certificate in media technology and learning sciences. And then from there, I went back to University of Florida and went to the Hillel as a program director. And I was just told, just create programs for the students at campus. All right. So I've always done more entrepreneurial, I guess, not entrepreneurial, right? Working within larger organizations. And you could say the same thing about Venture Asheville as part of a massive organization for our community, the EDC and the Chamber. So I don't have one of those stories, but it wasn't until grad school where I got that push to start a business. And I'll give you the quick chef sleeves pitch, if I may, because I think it's a lot of fun. You ever hear the expression, don't look in the kitchen of your favorite restaurant? You know why that is? Kitchens are hot and chefs get sweaty. And where's that sweat supposed to go? I'll tell you. It starts on their forehead in little beads. The little beads become big drops. And those drops sometimes fall off their face into your food. Or they drip down their head to their neck, down their arms, across their hands, onto their utensils, into your food. It happens all the time. Sweat gets in the food. You know, the way chefs work hasn't changed in something like 500 years. The chef's whites that we see our chefs wearing today go back to Renaissance France. If you look across activities and sports, professional attire, it all adapts with modern technology at the time. And it's about time that our kitchens got with the program. I'm introducing to you all chef sleeves. Chef sleeves inspired by Allen Iverson's shooting sleeve are made of 3 materials: nylon, spandex, and a polyaramid fiber like Kevlar. As a chef sweats, it wicks the moisture away from their skin and dries quickly on the surface, never getting sweat into your food. And the spandex creates vascular restriction, so chefs get less tired, can work longer and more consistently. And the polyaramid fiber protects chefs from burns and cuts and nicks, all kinds of things that happen in the kitchen. Chef Sleeves by Jeff Sleeves. That was a Chef Sleeves pitch. We never produced it. Yeah, that was just one that we was part of our product development class. We had a pitch and create a business plan around it, and we would do things like go to food truck rallies and give all these chefs $5 shooting sleeves we bought at Foot Locker, and we're like, just try it on, wear it for your shift. We'll come back in 3 hours and see how you liked it. And they really liked it, but never actually took the next step. Yeah. And then after grad school, we had just adopted our second dog, Tallulah, who's an Australian Shepherd. And cool. My wife's a veterinarian, of course, and we have another dog and a cat. And then this new dog, it was like, oh, we got to see where the new dog parks are. And we got to do this and do that. We found this problem of always wanting to go out and do things with our dog, but not having good resource to find nearby things to do with our dog. So I created Dog Friendly with a PH, because Dog Friendly with an F was taken. And it was just me. I went to the Groundwork Labs Accelerator in Durham through NC IDEA, went through that program, and learned how to do some web crawling and database building, and then all these no-code hacking, no-code, low-code type programs to create an app with a geolocating map in 13,000 locations across the country. Restaurants, parks, hotels, beaches, hiking trails, you name it, you can find it on the app. The way I got into Groundwork Labs, this is a fun story, is John Austin, the director at NC Idea. I knew that I was like one of the worst applicants, and I was just kind of like, maybe, you know, I'm up there against guys doing IoT device failure prediction and like really important stuff, and I'm here with like my app for people who like dogs. Yeah, so
a lot of people like dogs. More people have dogs than Internet of Things technology, I'd argue.
Yeah, so I knew I could get in based on the application. Like I get to the interview. At the interview, I brought in a tray of cookies that I told him my wife made, and they're all cut out in like dog paws and shapes of dogs, and all like silly little things. The truth is, I made them the night before, but I wanted him to feel like the whole family is like riding on this. We need you to in the Groundwork Labs. Please let us in. I got in, and that was really great. Not just to be in an accelerator. It was somewhat repetitive content-wise, so I went through in grad school, but to get to know the network of the Triangle and Durham and Raleigh and Chapel Hill, all that, their investors and the people who are making that ecosystem happen was great. And that app, we scaled up to 15,000 users. And then I sold it to a blogger who was just getting started almost exactly 2 years ago on May 4th. My non-compete runs out. I don't have any intention or plan of getting back into the dog business, but that was great just to get that kind of, I consider that my first at bat. Yeah. You know, my first time of building a product, going through the whole process, lean design, you know, human-centered design, working with people in Pakistan as developers and trying to find co-founders and trying to get investment. And then none of it went well. You know, you get a lot of bruises. And so I was glad to have a low stakes first at bat. Learned a lot about the industry, because the pet industry is unbelievable and fantastic and a lot of fun. And it's so diverse, from medicine to food to products to apps and technology. It's really cool. And then, yeah, we didn't make much money on that at all. Actually, we took what we made off of Dog Friendly and took a trip to Italy. So.
Money well spent.
Yeah, good time.
So I actually have a quick question for more clarity. The process of exiting and selling, even if it's, to your point, not a big exit, like, did you use a broker? Or did this person just reach out to you? It was just serendipitous. What was that process like?
I've been looking for someone to take it over for a year or more, even. Either people that were in a similar space, or they had an app for this or for that in the dog world. Like, hey, do you guys want to take our assets? We've got 15,000 users. We've got 13,000 locations. We've got this database. We've got this YouTube channel with 90,000 views and these Instagram followers, this and that. So they're trying to package up all of our assets and say, you may not want to do dog friendly. That's fine. But you may want our database as a feature for your product. Or you may want to take over our social media channels to give you a head start, which is what I think the person who bought our product, I think that's what she got more out of it, was essentially she had the database. I don't think she ever used it, but to get this big head start in all the SEO, she got all of our 301 redirects to her site. Thousands of followers and users all went to suddenly a new platform. Mm-hmm. So that's how I pitched it to her, was this is a big head start for you. It helps our users feel like, you know, they invested their time in something that's still living on. We're not shutting it down. They can still find the map when they want to go somewhere with their dogs. So there was 4 or 5 attempts to find a buyer. Some got really close and were very friendly. Others were insulting and people like laughed at the prices I was asking for. And it just kind of worked when I found this last one.
Cool. Yeah, I very interested in that. A couple people have reached out to us. We're constantly getting people to say hi after they opt into our email list. And in a very interesting turn of events, last week, like 3 people in 3 days reached out about either buying or selling or being a broker on businesses and asking if there were resources. And I saw an opportunity to get more information on that process.
Yeah, so for me, I didn't think a direct competitor. Direct competitors are always a good source of someone to buy you directly. But yeah, so our thing was how do we? I didn't think that was going to happen for us. I was trying to be a value add to a buyer.
Mm-hmm. Great.
But there are people in town that will lead you through mergers and acquisitions, and it takes a substantial fee to do it. But it's for larger sums, it's probably worthwhile.
Great. With so that was your last venture. Do you have any interest in telling us about what else is afoot? You don't have to. It's an option. The mic is yours.
So what we're working on now, outside of Venture Asheville and being a dad, is Just Kibitz, which is a dating site to help. Let me try that again. Just Kibitz, Just Kibitz, a dating site to help someone you love meet someone they'll love. This is the quick pitch on this one is all my mom wants is for my little brother to marry a nice Jewish girl. So much so that she created a fake JDate profile of my little brother to help him find a date. Long story short, it didn't end well. But what my mom was doing was pretty sweet, and I think ahead of her time, maybe behind her time. The way parents met other parents to set up their kids on dates is like how civilization started. It's how people left caves. And the world of online dating today is an absolute train wreck. 60% of women are sent unsolicited nude photos. 72% of all users have had to block another user. And less than 1 in 5 matches ever becomes a date. We want to turn these statistics around. By taking the oldest form of dating and bringing it online, we're letting mothers match with other mothers, talk about their kids, and if they think the kids would get along and should want a date, the parents can prepay for the date inside the app. That's it. That's Just Kibitz.
Love it. Does it work for married couples? Mom, will you pay for
more,
our date?
Yeah. Maybe the 2.0. I'm very excited to show this. We just got a new logo, and our good friends, your good friends and mine, Moonlight Makers, create our new shirts. Here they are.
Love it. The what's it called? Not Argyle. The raglan sleeve, the baseball.
Yeah, the
sleeve
baseball T-shirt.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the baseball tee. Yeah,
into it.
Pop.
Yeah,
fluorescent orange.
So
if you're listening to this, it's a good time to go to YouTube and look at how cool this shirt is.
Yeah, if there's ever been a compelling reason to check out our YouTube channel, this is it, people. It's a beautiful, beautiful shirt. And coincidentally, we have a very early draft. It's hidden, but a very early draft of about to be announced, making it an Asheville T-shirt that will rip off at the very end of this episode. Not actually. Rip the vest off.
Very nice shirt you got there.
Yeah.
I do want to talk a bit more about
please.
Just Kibitz, because the backstory I think is interesting and how it came to be.
Yeah.
I've had the idea for years. This is a true story. My mom was doing this for my little brother, and I didn't know. My wife was the one she told. We were home, we were in South Florida for something, and my mom pulled out this computer and showed it to Danielle. And look at these girls I'm trying to match Adam with. What do you think? But Danielle's like, what are you doing? But she's not.
It's identity theft.
People have tried this before for their kids. And it's been this like fun pitch we use at pitch parties. And I feel like at the pitch party, it's your first time walking into an ecosystem. You're worried people aren't going to like your idea or think it's dumb or think it's silly. And I see it. And I did a really big job. I really tried really hard of trying to make it a really safe space for ideas. And if I can take the most outlandish idea and make it seem kind of reasonable, like anything that comes after that's going to be fine. So this pitch, we've been refining it for like 2 years. And a bunch of my friends knew about it. And when Sawyer was born in July, a friend said, when you're the dad on paternity leave, when you're home, all you're doing is like making food once in a while and changing diapers. You have a lot of time on your hands, which isn't really true. So why don't you try to start this business? You have like 3 weeks at home, try to start a business. So I put some wireframes together. I got a landing page up. I talked to Mike, my CTO, my good friend. He's building the back end out. We got a few other people on board. Hannah was going to come on board if we could make this thing go full time. And suddenly, just in a few weeks, we had the skeletal structure of a dating site. We did it with a Tinder clone for our first prototype and just made it with moms instead. And then we got into Big Scary Fish Tank. We put our 7-minute pitch together, and we awarded $150,000 to keep going. And the Big Scary Fish Tank was put on by the Asheville Investment Club, which is a group of angel investors. And since then, we've been building out our marketing material. We've got the campaigns are about to launch. We have a video team that's creating we'll share it here. Our character we're creating is called the Yenta Fairy. And the concept here is that forever, the Yenta Fairy has been behind these great matchups in history. It's the magic between two mothers is the Yenta Fairy and all this stuff, right? She's this like shidduch, this matchmaker woman. And the idea is that she's tired and she wants to retire. So she created Just Kibitz. So you can be the Yenta you were born to be. And that's kind of our whole marketing pitch around this video campaign to drive traffic to the site.
Oh my goodness, I cannot wait to see
all
of this come out.
I'm so into it. I know that we've mentioned this in the past, but I think that the most recent season of Marvelous Miss Maisel is like teeing this situation up where if you don't watch Marvelous Miss Maisel, her mom is the word Yenta? Like, I don't know what that is, but she goes into matchmaking full steam ahead in this most recent season.
The actual matchmaker is a title. It's a job in like Jewish culture. It's called a shidduch or a shadchan. And I feel like that'd be a really bad URL.
How do you pronounce that?
So Yenta is, from Fiddler on the Roof, is the name of a woman who happens to be a shadchan. So in pop culture, being a Yenta has become associated with being a matchmaker, even though it's not exactly one for one thing. And a Yenta really is like a chatty, nosy, in-your-face woman, like the bossy lady of the community is a Yenta. But it's also like someone who, like, we talk about it in our marketing meetings. Like a Yenta looks at any kid as her kid. If you're one of her kids' friends, you may as well be her kid. And she's going to take care of you too. You sit at the table, there's going to be food for you. You want to meet somebody, she's going to introduce you. She's a Yenta. And so that's the idea of the Yenta Fairy, this archetypical, like Jewish mother, who could be anybody's mom kind of thing, is who we're trying to portray. And the actress, Maren Hinkle or Hinky from Marvelous Mrs. Maisel plays the mom. We have like our top tier choice of like really famous Jewish women celebrities, and she's on our. If we can get Maren, it would be incredible. I don't think we can afford her, but we would like. So Maren, if you're listening to this and you think it'd be a fun idea, give me a call.
Is equity on the table? Would that be something you'd be interested in? Could she?
For somebody at that level, we would. We have an allocation of shares for our employee stock ownership program, our employee shared ownership program. And we all of our employees are eligible for that program, and we would share it for someone like that who obviously we can't afford, but if they would take a small sum of money and some back end, like they're going to have to do social media posting or continued videos or more support, if there's going to be a long-term relationship, we would happy to extend equity to them.
Yeah, and I mean I'll use that as an opportunity to maybe segue back into these like universal truths we asked about, like what are some things that founders do. A thing that stood out for me through this is it seems your ability to identify not just like incentives, but like where opportunity lies and what people need. And so it's something about incentives, it's something about resources, and I find that really, like, I find it inspiring. And the way that you're talking about this is something that might not be intuitive, right? Like you might not obviously know that you could pay someone with the back end and have a stock owner pool, but like once you're exposed to it, it can be taught, and you do it once and then you can do it a second time. I just find that the idea of teaching, teaching entrepreneurship, I do think is possible. It's just the willingness to move towards unknowns is the thing that I think needs the most repetitions. And it just so happens that if you get entrepreneurial opportunities, you get given autonomy, you can flip that level of autonomy into your own endeavor if perhaps you have some seed money that you can start with, like the Impact Fund.
Yeah, Tony, I think you're talking about this tolerance for ambiguity, which is one of the competencies as well. Like you have to be comfortable walking through fog. You may not know what's on the other side of the fog, but you feel confident or competent enough to know how to get through it. You're not taking leaps, you're taking small steps.
Yeah.
And if we give you $5,000 in the micro grant, we don't give you $5,000 and say, see you later. Like you immediately go into Elevate or Scale Up or the AV Tech Incubator, or we don't let you just walk away free. Like we want to make sure you're getting support along the way. Because entrepreneurship, to be an entrepreneur, is a journey. There is no end point. It is absolutely a journey that grows along with the individual.
To your point on the fog metaphor, one of the metaphors that has really, I found to be one of the strongest versions of language to remind us that same truth is the idea that, like, in starting a business, you are not launching a rocket, which to launch a rocket, everything needs to be perfectly right. Otherwise, it explodes. And that is not a good thing. You're simply driving a car. And while driving a car, you can drive through fog so long as the headlights work. Like, you can go slow. You can drive faster if you get, a straight road. If it's windy, slow down. And, like, that concept to me of just remembering that we don't need to know exactly what this podcast is going to grow into a year from now. It's just probably a good thing to start it a year ago so that a year from now we get to make the decisions that are afforded to us because we started and because we continued.
Yeah, that's the corridor principle. That's exactly it. And I tried explaining this at demo day and I totally fumbled through it. But the corridor principle comes from the 80s, and a Harvard professor was saying the entrepreneurial journey is like walking down a corridor of hallways, that the pursuit of opportunity itself leads to more opportunities. As it was interesting that last week people were reaching out to you for potential partnerships or acquisitions or sales. It's because just in the pursuit of doing this podcast, making a name for yourself and building a marketing company, more opportunities will become apparent. The longer you do it, the more you see. You were saying something before I should go back to about the recognizing opportunity, things like, do I get some points in the back end? A lot of that can be taught through experiential education or mentorship. So I may not, I've never done a deal like that before, but I've met enough CEOs and read enough case studies in the Harvard Business Review or enough books to know that there's concepts like that out there. There's multiple ways to skin a cat. There's lots of ways to compensate somebody. Like, pricing is a huge topic for entrepreneurs, and it feels like such a big, scary topic. And it's really not. There's like 4 or 5 things in the pricing playbook you can do. It goes back to the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, promotion, place. It's really not as intimidating as it sounds. And so much of entrepreneurship to me is about Star Trek. And if you know Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, this has been replicated in the reboots, the Kobayashi Maru is the final exam to be a starship captain. Tony, give me a look like you know this already.
Well, I love hardline metaphors because they're something that you can cling on to for forever, and that you'll be able to track with, like, where am I in? Oh yeah, it's I'm at stage 2, and I don't actually know Star Trek much, but I'm just excited about what's about to happen.
I thought you said Klingon in there. So the Kobayashi Maru is a final exam. It's a simulation where you come out of warp and you're surrounded by Klingon birds of prey. And it's supposed to be a lose-lose situation. The idea is that everyone fails a Kobayashi Maru, and you're graded or evaluated on how do you handle failure. Because as a starship captain, you will see defeat. As a founder, as an entrepreneur, you will have setbacks you didn't know you would have. Like, bad things are going to happen. My mentor has this great quote. He says, "What happens when you start a business? Shit happens. Like, bad things will happen to you can't see coming. So how do you deal with that?" Now, of course, James Kirk is famous because he cheated and he rigged the program so he could win, and that made him famous at an early age as a starship captain. But generally, you're supposed to lose. You're supposed to fail. And how do you make your way out of what should be a no-win situation? That is if you want to boil everything down to one competency a founder needs, that's the one. How do you handle a no-win situation?
I'm into that.
Yeah.
I for what it's worth, though, I feel like whatever little venture we've had this year, I feel like we're winning. I feel like it's been hard, right? But like I'm so in love with the work that we've done in the process that all of the roadblocks and challenges and issues that we've certainly dealt with haven't felt catastrophic or crazy. And I imagine that's part of the part of the rest of the framework of what allows for entrepreneurs to be able to actually sleep at night.
Yeah, this idea that the how do you handle losing essentially is the lowest and highest bar at the same time. Because if you can handle losing well, you obviously can handle winning, right? So it's unfairly simplistic. And if I may quote the Talmud here for a moment, this great famous story with Rabbi Hillel and Rabbi Shammai, and this story goes, this is this too weird for your podcast?
No, go for it.
All right. So this Gentile goes up to Rabbi Shammai and he says, "Tell me all the Torah standing on one foot." And Shammai says, "Get out of here. I don't want to talk to you. Don't insult me like that." Then he goes to Shammai's rival, Rabbi Hillel, and he says, "Tell me the whole story. Tell me the whole Torah standing on one foot." And he hops on one foot and he says, "What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor, and the rest is just details." And so when we talk about this idea of entrepreneurship, it's, how can you handle no-win situation? The rest is just details. Like that simple act of being able to compose yourself, make level-headed, creative problem solving, being bootstrapped and resourceful, creating opportunities, creating value. That's all that all is the gestalt right there. The sum is greater than all the parts here. The whole greater than all the parts. That's what it is can you handle these difficult, unexpected, ambiguous situations? There's incredible mastery behind that simple minimalistic phrase.
Wow. Yeah, I really, really love that. And I want to bring it back to what's going on now and sort of what the future holds for you and for Venture Asheville. So tell us a little bit about what you're thinking about in the coming months and, year.
2020.
2020 is unprecedented. I hate that. Now, let me start over. 2020 is an ambiguous at best year for everybody. No one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, next month, in 6 months. The Chamber and EDC and Venture Asheville, we are an event-heavy organization. Much of our revenue comes from events, and those are all evaporating, or they are turning online, or they're trying to find a new home in some way, some form, or being reinvented. So we've taken pitch parties online. All of our mentorship's gone online. That was pretty easy to transfer for us at Venture Asheville. Towards the end of the year in December, we'll have the 2020 Venture 15, our great big award show at the end of the year for everything from the 15 fastest growing companies to our mentor, entrepreneur, investor, and so on of the year, our big awards we give out. And we hope we're still doing that December 17th at the Orange Peel. We're not changing that yet. We're holding that date. We're hoping by December we have enough people either who are not vaccinated but inoculated or available or have been exposed, and we can have an event. But a lot of things are being reinvented in a virtual space. I'm actually super optimistic about the future of Asheville's ecosystem as a whole. If you look at the Dogwood Health Trust, right, and the mission HCA Mission Innovation Fund, there are some massive opportunities coming to our region that are going to be absolutely transformational. And I think now they just take on a new tenor or a new significance given the struggles in our economy and our workforce, everyone who's around here. I want to talk about the HCA Mission Fund for a moment. I think this is not as well known as the Dogwood Health Trust, but as part of the sale from Mission to HCA, there was like 15 or so covenants they had to keep. And one of them was the establishment of a $25 million innovation fund.
Wow.
This is a corporate venture fund being operated by jointly Mission and HCA. And I expect most of the funding to be in the $1 to $2 million range. I mean, this is a venture fund, so they want to see that classic 10x return. Do you know what it's going to do to our community to have 10 to 15 or even 20 high-tech healthcare startups in our community in the next 4 years? That money has to be spent. The money, the $25 million, like legally by the Attorney General, it has to be spent here. Like, we're a beer city because we've got 10, 15 breweries downtown and 30 across, 60 across the region. So when you put 10, 15 high-tech healthcare startups in our little community, that's a paradigm shift.
Yeah,
right there. What that's going to do for job creation, follow-up investment, who needs to come here to work, or workforce training programs to take people to become ready for those jobs in those companies. So I'm still as optimistic as I was before the crisis. If anything, it reaffirms what we've been saying for a long time, that we need a diverse economy as a healthier economy. I think tourism gets a bad rap here. Tourism is, I think, is a great opportunity for our community. It's only 15% of our economy. I think people think it's a lot more. Only 15%.
Yeah, that
And
seems.
it's worth keeping that in mind.
It seems like it would be a much bigger number than 15%. That is, in fact, surprising for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you look at as a whole, it's probably more jobs because they're lower wage jobs generally, versus you'd see in the more healthcare startups we're going to have, which are going to be higher paying jobs. There's also a ton of manufacturing here. Healthcare itself, I mean, Mission Health is the largest employer in our region. Government jobs, education jobs are pretty big too. You look at like Asheville City Schools is one of our largest employers. It just gets a lot more spotlight because that's such a driver to the community.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. It's kind of what Asheville's known to be, a place that you go
Mm-hmm.
and visit to the rest of the world. So that kind of makes sense. But that's really, really interesting. I'd love to move into our speed round.
Great.
Are you ready, Jeff?
I'm so ready. I prepared questions. I'm so ready. I prepared questions for you guys.
Well, this is a double speed round. Cool.
So do you want to go one for one, or how do you want to do this?
Let's do it.
Let's do it that way.
Okay.
So Adventure 15, you wore this amazing outfit that I think everybody talked about. The night will always remember what Jeff Kaplan wore. Can you just take a minute to describe what you wore and where did you get this outfit?
Yeah, so the outfit, let's describe it first. It was, like a slacks, a white shirt, a skinny black tie, but what stole the show was this insane red paisley, almost neon blazer I found on Amazon. So I was between the white, blue, and red blazer, and I was sending the links to my coworker Ryan, my wife, asking what blazer people like the best, and they said the red one was the best. I tried it on. I felt like I looked like a magician or something.
You did look a little magician.
A red coat and these black pants. But it was very festive, and I think it was the right tone we were going for the Venture 15 this year.
It was fun.
Love it.
Cool.
Okay, my question.
All right.
You two have this great history with the country Italy.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you prefer, cacchetti or tapas?
Definitely Italian, like stuzzichini snacks. If that's what you're asking, you mean between like Spanish tapas and Italian?
Yeah, Spanish tapas are more Venetian cacchetti, which is
sure.
bite-sized.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay.
It's just the flavors of Italian food that, his last name is Ubertaccio. Like, how can we not like that?
So we're gonna stay in the team corner on this, but Italian cuisine for us is very special. We do love all of the Mediterranean cuisines.
Yeah, Curate knocks it out of the park every time, so
you can't really
we won't complain there.
We honeymooned in Portugal, and they do an incredible small plate game plan as well. Mm-hmm. But push comes to shove, it's going to be Italian food winning fist to fist with us. What's our second question?
I have a entrepreneur question for you, which is, and you just don't think about this too much because it could be a loaded question, but most inspiring entrepreneur for you right now in this moment.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a very political answer that I got to say someone local to give them some. That's what I think I got to do here. I feel like the easy answer is someone like Elon Musk or Sarah Blakely. Those are just so classic. But no, I want to say who's really inspiring me right now in our community. Dan Wisnant, retired Colonel Dan Wisnant. Not to go back to the veteran thing.
Yeah.
Wow. But Dan Wisnant is he's a full colonel, retired. When he pitches his SDV, Service Disabled Veteran Office Systems, they furnish and design veteran affairs hospitals. And they say their tagline is, "We are veterans designing spaces to heal veterans." And in his pitch, he talks about the president of the company, or the executive director, Mike. I can't remember Mike's last name, but he talks about how Mike is a Gold Star family. That means someone in their family was lost in combat overseas. And it was actually under Dan's leadership, his charge in Fallujah, Iraq. Or is that Afghanistan? I think it's Afghanistan. In Fallujah. And so this whole team is entirely owned by veterans, and they have this insane work ethic and this incredible commitment to each other. And it's like, I was in a fraternity in college, and I thought like brotherhood was like a thing. It pales in comparison to the bond that this team has for each other and the way they treat, friends of friends. If you're with them, you are in. And what they've done with this company, this concept of veterans designing spaces to heal veterans. And, he came in trying to raise money. They renegotiated with suppliers. They're doing all the right things as entrepreneurs. They're having an absolutely last year they had a monster year. They're having an even bigger one this year. They were the number one company at the Venture 15 last year. So this insane growth rate. I would not be surprised if they were number one again.
Yeah. So I went to the pitch competition, and I was floored by them and by Appalachian Pharmacy. The two of those, both of those businesses represent such crazy opportunity awareness and like specific knowledge and like connecting these things that are just hard to like the moat around how difficult it is to pull off what they're doing, and like how many seats there are at each of the tables is just absolutely dumbfounding. And then the scale of the opportunities are also crazy for me. So I love that as a pick. I just assumed you were going to say Kay Bentley, who's winning everything right now, and I think is somehow or another nominated for May's Chamber Award.
She won. She got Small Business of the Month. Yeah. Kay's a great example of resource leveraging. I was so impressed the first time I saw her van, and I've gotten to know her pretty well. I know you guys profiled her. Kay is very inspiring as well. The thing about Appalachian Specialty and SDV together is they represent another academic concept called kaleidoscope thinking. Mm-hmm. So some people call it threading the needle, right? Finding that really unique opportunity across the high moat or barriers and to find the perfect opportunity. And the kaleidoscope thinking is more about the more you shift and rotate like the lenses you see the world through in a kaleidoscope, these beautiful images emerge. In the same way, with the exact right alignment of resources, the perfect opportunity emerges.
Yeah. Google those people. Hopefully one day we have them each on the podcast, because what they're doing is going to be huge. I mean, it already is huge, but is going to continue to be huge. And it's exciting to have them in our community.
All right, last round of speed.
My second question is, sticking with the Italian theme, best pizza in town. What is it?
Ooh, we recently tried to do a little, so I will say, because I'm a smart husband, that the best pizza in town is out of our oven during...
Bravo. Bellissimo.
But
there's also been a lot of bad pizza that's come out of our oven, but we won't talk about that. Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean...
We have a top three. Usually.
Yeah, top three are White Labs Pizza, which we recently discovered. I don't think enough people know that they do pizza, but their pizza is, to me, probably the closest to like a true Neapolitan style pizza. All Souls Pizza, which is kind of like its own category, I think, like kind of Neapolitan, but they use a lot of different flours and whole grains and things, so it's kind of a different taste. And then, you know what? We actually haven't had their pizza, but I can judge from the way it looks and from the way that everything else they put out, which is Cucina 24. They serve pizza and they do it in a brick oven, and it looks super legit. And we love everything that Brian Canapelli just gives to the world.
And my qualifier, just color commentary on the play-by-play, is that we specifically love a Neapolitan style pizza, which is like a softer, lighter, cooks for 90 seconds or so. I grew up in New Jersey. We lived in New York together. The New York style pie is also fantastic. It's just different. And when we think best, we think Neapolitan and a very specific personal pie kind of experience. So take that with a grain of salt if you're from Chicago and think that your pizza should look like a square and cake, which is fine. I think all carbohydrates as vehicles for cheese and sauce and other toppings are great, and they're all welcome in my belly, which I'm doing my best to not let grow too much because Sarah's been in beast mode cooking.
I think we usually go on like a carb-free like diet because it's just been pizza and pasta and bread because I've been cooking so much during all of this. But anyways, last question for you, Jeff, which is the magic wand question. I'm sure you know this question well from our other podcast episodes, but if we had a magic wand or someone in our audience had a magic wand, what one thing would you ask for right now? It can range from
lunch
or free hour from the baby or, world peace, whatever you want.
I really want this coronavirus crap to be over. I really want people to be able to go back outside, to see and hug my friends, to sit at a brewery for hours, to shoot in the breeze with people, making new friends, and being, let me say another way. If I had a magic wand, I want to be able to enjoy the company of others again.
In person, in physical spaces, and touch them without fear, their fear or your fear, and all of that.
I'm kind of a hugger.
Same.
My mom was babysitting during the Venture 15 this year, and she watched it on the live stream. And her comment afterwards were, "Do you know all these people, or are you just hugging everybody?" Right? It's like both. I really miss shared experiences and building relationships with people. It's not the same. Like this is cool. This is great. Recording a podcast is fine. I was talking to my boss Clark about this. Like this guy scheduled a meeting with the two of us to do networking. Like this is like the worst kind of networking I've ever done. Like networking for me is staying in line at 1 million cups and just striking up a conversation with somebody next to you in line for coffee. Yeah. And next thing you know, you're changing business cards and you're following up. And relationships are built off many shared experiences, and we're not having the same shared experiences anymore. I really missed that. I wanted that. If I had a magic wand, I want to share experiences with people in person.
Yeah, I hear that. Our first experience at All Day Darling was with you, and from that moment forward, All Day Darling was like a very productive workspace and like community building meeting place for us. And I'm with you on that special in-person X factor about things like serendipity coming into play that just is hard. It takes a lot more effort to connect in this world, and even then the upper bound on what good might come of it is, I'd say, capped. So I think that's a great answer. And especially the two of us with so much pizzazz as we have.
Spunk.
And spunk, that's what the word was. So much spunk.
I'll call it joie de vivre, but sure.
So if you were to summarize how you're doing in Asheville, how would you say that you're doing in Asheville? Are you making it?
I think one of your guests said it best. And that was, I'm doing okay-ish in Asheville.
Oh man, I think it's never been a more true statement than probably right now.
Right. There's a lot to be thankful for. We got to count our blessings. There's a lot to be thankful for in our world. I think it's an entrepreneurial trait to be dissatisfied with the status quo. And our status quo going into this thing was really good. We have great amenities in our area, and those are being so restricted. So our status quo has gone down a little bit. And so because of that, I think we're doing okay-ish. Why? Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I couldn't have said it better myself. And one of the things I'll add to that concept is I went to a conference it was the Inc. 500 or something conference. It was in LA, and the founder of Life is Good, the brand, was there. And he had an absolutely incredible keynote presentation. And one of the things that just stuck with me is that optimism is like a pragmatic approach to business building. Like it actually makes sense to remain optimistic, in large part because then you can find opportunities and they show up because you're looking for them. And even in times like we're experiencing now, which, undoubtedly are not what anyone would have asked for, there might be good that comes of it. And if you're looking for it, I just think it's more likely that you find it. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today. How in the world would someone follow you, support you, connect with you on the World Wide Web, email, however you want people to connect?
Yeah. First, it's an absolute honor to be on this podcast. I'm a huge fan of you two, a huge fan of how well you tell the stories of entrepreneurs in our community, which is such a rich entrepreneurship community here. So thank you for doing this podcast, and thanks for having me. It's an absolute treat to spend time. It's great to see you guys anyways, but this is a lot of fun. To keep up with me, you could follow us on any social media at VentureAVL. We have a newsletter, which is more or less my weekly love letter to the community, where we just kind of kibitz, we chit chat. It's like an oddly personal corporate newsletter that we send out every week. Maybe like too personal sometimes. And if you want to stay with me personally, this is going to sound so dorky, but LinkedIn is probably the best way to keep up with me.
That's great.
Send me an invite, and please put in something in the message like, hey, listen to you, or hey, we met at this thing, and send me that invite that way, and I'll be much more apt to accept it. That's linkedin.com/in/JeffDude.
Jeff Dude. We'll have that linked in the show notes page, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Mr. Jeff Kaplan, there is a baby that I think needs your attention. We have overstayed our welcome.
Please.
And we want so
He's
much.
He's trying to walk. He's hearing these thumps and cries all day, all night.
But thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Thank you for welcoming us into the community, with which, like, you are no doubt a central hub, a very important figure in it. And we are so grateful for how warmly you've received us and how you've connected us to people. So thank you. It's been a privilege to have you today.
Thank you, guys.
And that was episode 54 with Jeff Kaplan. Geez Louise, holy moly. Jeff is great. I think that he's doing an incredible job in our community. He's been a great resource to us in our first year in Asheville.
And many of our guest interviewees as well have mentioned Venture Asheville's work. So we're glad to have brought him on the podcast.
For sure. Had the opportunity to share some of the story, and perhaps most importantly, let you all know about the many ways that the Chamber of Commerce in Asheville is here and trying to be of use to the community. So please disseminate this episode amongst friends who have business ideas, who are looking to either start or scale or grow or transition a business. We have a lot of resources here in the community. Venture Asheville is one of them. We are so excited to share this story. So if you liked this episode, please let us know by visiting either in the description on the player that you're using or on our podcast page, the link that allows you to leave a review, a 5-star review or a comment review on Apple Podcasts. By leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, you help this podcast get found by people who care about Asheville and our entrepreneur community.
And furthermore, don't forget to subscribe. You can go to makingitnashville.com/subscribe for all the different ways you can stay connected with us, including our email newsletter, which is where we announce new episodes and give behind the scenes information about each episode. It's also where we share events first and tons of other helpful information. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player.
And I would be remiss to leave out our YouTube channel because we had a fun little call out to our YouTube channel with Jeff in the episode. And so if you are watching on YouTube, high five to you. If you have not checked out our YouTube channel, please do. You guessed it. It's called Making It in Asheville. You'll be able to find it rather easily, or visit makingitinashville.com/subscribe, and you'll see it as a link there. And so one more time, we want to give some love and appreciation And thanks to our podcast sponsor, Range Urgent Care. Again, Range is doing things so differently than we've seen anywhere else with regards to fast healthcare services. They are truly innovating in a space. So no longer would you wait in a waiting room for an unclear amount of time. You use their website, you book a slot, you show up when you say that you were going to, they serve you when they said they were going to, you know exactly how much you're going to pay ahead of time, or you can subscribe. I have subscribed, and if you are interested in learning more about Range Urgent Care, go to makingitinasheville.com/range. We have all sorts of information about the special offer that they are providing to just this Making It in Asheville community. You get a free month of a year's subscription, and that's a real great value, especially if you are like me and a hair injury prone. So thank you once again, Range Urgent Care, for being our season 4 sponsor. We're so thankful.
And we'd also like to thank ourselves. That sounds so weird. But Making It Creative is our marketing agency, and that really is a big part of why this podcast even is able to exist. We offer meaningful marketing solutions that we help businesses really identify that one marketing lever that they can pull that's going to have the biggest impact. And so again, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Making It Creative. So visit makingitcreative.com to learn more.
Perfect. And the last thing we'll say, the way that we always leave this podcast, is that if there is someone in Asheville that you think we should have on the show, please let us know. The way to do that is to visit makingitinasheville.com/podcast. We have a very simple nomination process. Let us know who in town you would love to have us interview. It can be you, it can be someone else, but we are always open to connecting to new people. And as our 1-year anniversary has just come and gone, we announced a winner of a small little birthday giveaway that we were running. Sarah, you want to tell a little bit? I know it's after the fact, but you want to tell us a little bit about what we were planning with the 1-year giveaway?
Yeah. So for our first year of Making It in Asheville, we put together a package which includes a free one-on-one marketing consultation with a local business here in town. They get to be a guest on our podcast as well, or nominate someone of their choice. We have our new t-shirt that we are giving away to this one lucky winner, the first person to get this t-shirt. It's called Doing Okay-ish in Asheville. We'll be launching that soon. And they get delicious homemade chocolate cookies made by yours truly, because no birthday is a birthday without cake or cookies. And so congratulations to John Hornsby Creative. He was the winner of our birthday giveaway. We will be connecting with him this week, and I'm sure you'll hear more about him soon.
Perfect. Episode 54, week 54. Sarah, we did it. Listener, thank you for making it all the way back here into the cheap seats of episode 54. It is greatly appreciated, and we look forward to talking with you next week. Do good, be good. Sarah, high five.
High five.
Based on you. I don't know. Cool. Thank you, you two, for watching to the very end.